Welcome to a new tutorial from the MC Knitting Adventures podcast. Today's tutorial is all about the provisional cast on. We're going to look at 3 different methods and to talk about advantages and disadvantages of all of them. Now, why do you need to do a provisional cast on? Well, the whole idea is that you want to do a provisional cast on to hold live stitches. So option 1 is you can do it to make a cowl and then join the cowl up. You could do that with Kitchener stitch, by grafting. So that's one example. Another example is to do it as on a collar that you're knitting a sweater on that you want to knit down to start with and then pick up the live stitches to perhaps do like a turtleneck, those kind of things. So there's a number of places where you'd want to do a provisional cast on. So let's get started on our first method. In our first method, we're going to need some waste yarn. You want to make sure this yarn is similar in weight to the yarn that your live stitches are going to be on. But you need it to be smooth so nothing's going to catch. I'm using 100% acrylic just because that'll make life easier. I need a crochet hook that is the same size as the knitting needle that I'm going to use, and then I need the actual yarn that I'm going to be working with. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the yarn I'll be working with and the knitting needle because we're going to start just with the crochet hook. So the first thing I need to do is I need to make a slip stitch. So we kind of wind it around and then make the loop through and then pull it tight. So there's a stitch. Now what we're going to do is we are going to chain a number of stitches. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. So I'm going to chain 15 stitches. So 1, 2, 15. So that's going to give me enough stitches to create 15 live stitches. Now what I need to do is I need to crochet a few extra ones. So let me crochet a few extra. So I'll do 5 extra. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm just going to pull the yarn through. And then here's the important part. On the end that I need to zip them out, when I'm all done, I'm going to tie a little knot. And that's going to tell me that that knot shows me the end that I am going to undo. All right, so I have this end with no knot, and then I have this end with the knot that's telling me this is the one that I have to undo. All right, so let's take a look at what I'm going to do to make these stitches. If you can take a look, you can see that I'm showing you the V's on these stitches. All right, and it's flat and it's V's. The other side, you can see these bumps. And the bumps create little holes. And that's going to show us where we can put our knitting needle. So the side without the knot is to my left, and the side with the knot is to my right. Now, I know I have a few extra stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4 extra stitches. So now I know I'm going to start right here. So I put my knitting needle through the bump, and then I grab my actual yarn that I'm going to be working with. In this case it's blue. And then I pull the stitch up through that stitch. And then I'm going to continue. So there's the next bump. And I'm going to create a knit stitch through there. And there's the next one. And I'll go around. And I just keep working through all these bumps until I have as many stitches as I need. So I was aiming for 15, so let's see what we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So right now I have 15 stitches on my knitting needle. I do have an extra one on my left hand side. That's not a problem. This is the side where I have more of them, and this is the side where the knot is. And so what I can do for now is I can knit around for this, and then when I want to take a look and grab the live stitches, I could knit this other way. And I'll show you right now how you would take it out. I've knit a few rows just so that you can see what's happening. So my waste yarn is sitting there and holding live stitches. And this is my actual working yarn. So if, let's say I was knitting a cowl, I would be knitting straight around, and then I would want to join the ends together. So I need to get those live stitches back. So let's take a look at how that happens. Now I'm going to take the end, there's my knot. I'm going to take that end and I'm going to undo it. So I'm just going to take my crocheted stitch and I'll pull that through. I think the knot will come through okay. Let me just do that. There we go. So now the stitches are ready that I can pull, and I'm just going to show you carefully so I can pull them. They're just going to basically unzip. Now, when I get to the stitches that are here, I have to be prepared that I have to catch them. I will be honest, that last one is always a little interesting because that's the end that you started at. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to grab that stitch. So there's the stitch. And then all my job is to do is to pull on my waste yarn and grab the next stitch. And pull the waste yarn and then grab the stitch. Pull the waste yarn and grab the stitch. If you're braver than I am, you can kind of undo the whole thing, but I'm going to tell you honestly, it's probably easier to do a stitch at a time. That way you don't lose anything. So you undo it, grab the stitch, undo the loop on your waste yarn. So you can see where you don't want any yarn that's super fluffy, because that's not going to help. So undo, grab the stitch, undo, grab the stitch. Now I'm just going to keep working across, and then when I get to the last one, we'll take a look. So I'm at my last stitch. I'm just going to stick my knitting needle through, pull that out. Ooh, one more stitch to grab and pull it out, and then this will come all the way through. My knot might catch in there. There we go. And now I have live stitches on both ends. Some people design patterns so you knit this way and then you come back and grab the live stitches and then knit the other way. So that's method one. You make the chain, you put your knitting needle into the bumps, and then you pick up your stitches that way. In the second and third methods of doing the provisional cast on, we actually create live stitches on the knitting needle using the crochet hook. So let's take a look how that works. For the second method, once again, we're going to make our slip stitch. We're going to put it on the crochet hook. Now, we're going to take our knitting needle, and we're actually going to almost make an X with it. So we're going to grab the crochet yarn, the waste yarn, and pull it through the hole. So we've actually made a stitch on the knitting needle. Now what has to happen is I have to bring the yarn back and around because the yarn has to be at the back of the needle. So now I'm ready to do another one. There's that X. So grab the yarn, pull it through the stitch, then take the yarn behind. Grab, make a stitch, take the yarn behind. Grab, and make the stitch. Take the waste yarn behind the needle, grab, make a stitch. And what you're going to do in this process is you're going to make as many stitches as you need. Just continuing through the process, around, then take your crochet hook over. Around, take the crochet hook over, around, take the crochet hook over, and around. Now I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 stitches. Let's do one more. There's my X. Grab that. I'll just move that out of the way so it's easier to see. Grab that. Grab the yarn with your crochet hook, pull it through. Now what has to happen is, once again, we have to kind of make that chain. So I am just going to chain 4 or 5 more. And once again, I'm going to take that out, take the thread through that hole, just so it doesn't come apart. Now in this case, there are my stitches. So I have 12 stitches on the needle, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And these stitches over that are off, the crocheted chain that I've done, that tells you the end that you're going to start ripping it out to get back to your live stitches. So I've got these stitches on my needle. I can start knitting with my yarn right away on those stitches. So this is a little easier to do because you're actually knitting right onto the knitting needle. So that's the second method. The way that you rip it back is exactly the same. Ripping the waste yarn out, you'll just collect it, take it through here, the end through here, and then unzip it is what they call it. You'll just unzip it the same way once you've got your knitting done. The third method, we're still going to need our knitting needle, our crochet hook, and our waste yarn. And just as in the second method, we're going to end up with our stitches of waste yarn right on the knitting needle. This method gives you a little bit more of a stretchy edge if that's something that you need. It's not necessary, but it does. That's one reason for doing it this way. We're going to start again with our slip stitch. There it is. We're going to put it on our crochet hook. We're going to grab our knitting needle, and the yarn is going to be underneath the knitting needle. So now instead of making an X, we have two things that are parallel. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap our yarn all over the knitting needle, over the crochet hook and around, and then we're going to pull the crochet hook through that initial slip stitch. And our yarn is right back where it needs to be. So we're going to take it over both of them, bring it around, and then bring it around, and then pull it through. Same thing again. We're going to take it around, grab it, pull it through. So in this case, we don't have to keep bringing our yarn to the back because the yarn's already at the back. So we're going to go around both the knitting needle, the crochet hook. Trick is to keep the yarn taut so that you can get it through. And we just keep going through. And around. And grab it. And around again. And pull it through. And around again. And pull. Oops, sometimes it slips off. You're not keeping it tight enough. There we go. Over and then through, and then over and then through. 6, 8, 10. So there's 10 stitches. So you get the idea of how that works. And once again, what I would do then is I would just chain some more stitches. And then I would cut the end and just pull it right through. And so those are some stitches in waist yarn. I'm going to knit from that edge all the way through, and then all I would have to do is to bring this yarn through. And I once again will show you how easy this is, because as long as you make sure you remember the end. So what's going to happen when I unzip it is all the stitches are going to come off, but that's okay because this is waist yarn. So they're going to come off, and there they go. And so that's our provisional cast on. It's going to allow you to come back to live stitches if you need to join things with Kitchener stitch, if you want to knit in two separate directions, or if, for example, you want to deal with neckline and you want to knit up, for example, if you're going to do a turtleneck. So I hope you found that tutorial on provisional cast on helpful. If you have any questions, just comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you and help you out. Until next time, you take care.